Okay, so next up, our next speaker is Oliver Kroner. Ollie is the Sustainability Manager for the City of Cincinnati. His work focuses on climate science and urban policy, including energy, transportation, waste, and food systems. Ollie leads collaboration of government and community partners to advance and track the sustainability, equity, and resilience strategies of the Green Cincinnati Plan.
Like Angela said, our office is really laser focused on the climate crisis and how it will impact city government and day-to-day operations, how it will impact quality of life for our residents, and what we can do about it. And to give a quick lay of the land, the climate crisis looks differently here in Cincinnati than it does in many other parts of the world. And we're not dealing with the hurricanes and forest fires and sea level rise. We're dealing with increases in surface heat temperatures, increases in pest species, but primarily increases in storm events. We call them 100-year storms that are statistically supposed to happen once every 100 years. We're now seeing several over the last 5 years, on top of our 50-year storms, on top of our 25-year storms. So anybody studying statistics, you can help us correct this math, because the math is changing. And as you know, Cincinnati is very hilly. So when we experience these storm events, it runs down the hills, creates flash flooding. When the hills become saturated, we see landslides. This image right here is Columbia Parkway, which you're probably familiar with. That landslide blocked traffic, and just earlier this year, we wrapped up a $17 million hillside stabilization project that we hope will prevent future challenges. But that $17 million comes out of the city government's budget that could pay for other things, other core governmental services. So this is a problem that is here now, impacting our day-to-day government. And I'm sure you are all familiar with our local sewer system, the fact that we have a combined sewer system that is easily overwhelmed when we have these storm events, and that can create combined sewer overflows that pumps raw sewage into people's backyards, into public waterways, in some cases into people's homes via sewer backups. Very nasty problem that is unpleasant, but also has long-term health implications when you have that volume of moisture inside a home. So this is hundreds of millions of dollars of storm damages that we can now attribute to the climate crisis. So this is a problem that is here now, impacting government, impacting quality of life. So what do we do about it? Well, Cincinnati has long been planning and preparing for the climate crisis. Back since 2008, when we adopted our first climate action plan, Build the Green Cincinnati Plan, we measured how much carbon emissions we produce as a city and set long-term reduction targets and outlined a handful of strategies to help us achieve those. And as you might imagine, the science of climate is rapidly evolving. The policies and politics available are changing, and the technologies continue to mature. So we have found the need to update the plan on a 5-year basis. So we to update for next year. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here momentarily. One of the key roles of our office is actually modeling the carbon emissions we generate as a city. So when we think about the environmental crisis, there are a lot of different components of it, some of which Connie touched on. When we zoom in on carbon emissions, it helps us strategize our approach to decarbonizing Cincinnati. So you can see here, cars and transportation account for about 1/3 of our emissions. And then buildings, our residential buildings, industrial buildings, and commercial buildings account for about 60%. So you think about the fossil fuels that we use to power our cars, to heat and cool our buildings, and that's really the bulk of where our carbon comes from. But that's important data that gives shape to our strategy. So the Green Cincinnati Plan is really a community vision for what a sustainable, equitable, resilient future looks like for the city of Cincinnati. And I'm only going to touch on it lightly here and then get into some areas where our work overlaps, and we partner with universities in the region. But at the center of this is a pretty extensive community engagement process. We held over 30 public meetings around the city. I know many of you participated in those. We collected over 1,400 different recommendations from the public on how to address the environmental crisis and the climate crisis here. Then we partnered with UC to analyze the carbon reduction potential of the recommendations we received, and we partnered with Xavier University to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of the highest impact strategies. And all in all, we presented 80 strategies to City Council for consideration. Those 80 touch on the different focus areas you see here and help us achieve an 80% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2050, building on those three themes that I've touched on. In building a community vision, we are really doing our best to catalyze collective impact. I think we're all aware the climate crisis is an all hands on deck problem. And the scope of the work here is far bigger than our office can take on, far bigger than city government can take on. So along the way, different organizations across the community have put their name down next to different strategies, serving as champions to help see the work come to life. So this is a variety of those organizations. This list has continued to grow, but you can see some of our local universities are key partners here. And collaboration with universities can take different shapes. Some of them are very pragmatic. Many of you probably know Daniel Hart at UC. His office partnered with our office in some of the uptown waste diversion efforts. So as you might imagine, during the big move out week for campus, there's quite a bit of waste generated. And through our collaboration, we created some strategies to help divert as much of that waste from the landfill as possible. So our recycling team was present to receive recyclables. St. Vincent de Paul was present to help direct some of those reusable goods to the thrift store rather than the landfill. And I don't have the data before me, but this is many tons of waste that don't go to landfill. They go to further use. But most of our work is more research oriented when it comes to university partnerships. We're coming out of a public health pandemic, I hope. We're at a stage where we can look back and say, who was vulnerable to this crisis? What worked and what didn't? What are the long-term implications? And in many ways, the climate crisis is presenting a parallel path here, where we now have a better understanding of how the crisis will impact certain pockets of our community differently than others, based on socioeconomic factors, based on demographic factors, based on where within the city you live. So I'll hat tip Miami University, who helped in the early stages of some of our urban heat mapping, and that's a map you see here on the left, helped give some sense to where we are experiencing concentrations of heat during heat events. But that work has evolved, and we've partnered very closely with both Green Umbrella, Groundwork Ohio, and the University of Cincinnati, the lab of Dr. Carly Trott, in developing our first ever climate equity indicators report. So this is a collection of 55 different metrics that help us understand more specifically, more granularly, where in the city we are experiencing different climate risks, who in the city is experiencing these risks, how do they manifest from one community to another. And we can use that data to better target our resources, better target our policy design. That's available on our website, and probably also UC's if you look for it, Climate Equity Indicators Report. I'm only going to touch on this lightly because I imagine Kelsey and Groundwork will dive deeper, but one of our key partnerships is the Climate Safe Neighborhoods work, where based on that data and the Climate Indicators Report, how do we then do deep dives within a community to develop community resilience plans? And so the Climate Safe model engages a small collection of community members and pays them for their lived experience around the climate crisis. So, I think academics in particular, no offense, can be sometimes in the sky and fairly abstract in the evaluation and analysis. And I'll include myself in that. When we're thinking at a city level, our data can lead us in different directions than we're thinking at a community level. And so we've come to understand that the people closest to the problems are often closest to the solutions. And these workshops that are held over 6 to 8 weeks help us understand specifically where we have problems and specifically where we need trees, where we need cooling stations, where we could have improvements to bus shelters, et cetera. I'll leave the rest to Kelsey on that one. And then when we get into program and policy design, when we measure equity, one of our key metrics is energy poverty and energy burden, which is the percentage of the percentage of household income spent on utilities. And national studies show that Cincinnati has among the highest rates of energy poverty in the country. So we're trying to design programs to address this, but we've come to realize that our grasp of our own building stock is fairly limited. We don't know much about our building typology, how they're heated and cooled, how many units are in buildings. And we partnered with Dr. Amanda Webb to do quite a bit of research around this building inventory, helping us understand what of our buildings were built during different eras and what the likely energy efficiency strategies are that we would like to roll out, and then measure the impact of different energy efficiency improvement strategies. So that's really helped us make leaps and bounds in micro-targeting specific buildings that are energy laggards. Before I step here, I'm only touching on a few examples. There are many more. I saw Dr. Alan White in the chat earlier. I'm sitting below one of his food maps in our office right now. I hope Ryan at Green Umbrella will talk about the 2030 district, which is a cross-sector collaboration where we partner with Tiffany at NKU, and we partner with Andy at UC, bring the experts at different organizations together to think through how we can collectively achieve some of this climate action. Now, as we move forward, we now have a motion from our city council to update the Green Cincinnati plan for adoption next year. And we are mapping a fairly extensive community engagement process to try to tap into the collective expertise of the city. We will lean heavily on our academic partners, but we are initiating what will be a very intense community engagement session. And there will be many opportunities for partnership evaluation of different strategies. We would very much like to have the academic rigor behind the strategies to map our carbon neutrality, to map our equity work moving forward. So that is our work in a nutshell. If you would like to keep in touch through the 2023 Green Cincinnati Plan development process, please visit greencincinnatiplan.org. We actually have a climate survey there right now and an opportunity to share your suggestions for what should be considered as part of that plan.